everybody. Welcome back to another episode of CCWTX Chats. Today we have some special guests with us. I will let you guys introduce yourselves. Martha, if you want to go first.
Okay, so I'm Martha Banda. I'm one of the SANE nurses from Medical Center Hospital. I work primarily in the emergency department as the clinical coordinator educator, but I also do SANE as another part of another role in my job.
Awesome, thank you. Detective Gonzalez.
Hi, I'm Detective Gonzalez with the Odessa Police Department. I work in the Criminal Investigations Division here with crimes against person cases.
Okay, awesome. So today we're going to be talking about the process if somebody decides to report that they have been sexually assaulted. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, I want to ask you guys, what is one thing that you wish survivors knew about your role when prosecuting sexual assault? So I will let Detective Gonzalez go first on this one.
One thing I'd like survivors to know is that our roles as detectives is not nearly to try the case across the street at the courthouse. Our job is fact-finding and evidence collection to help guide that case in the right direction. One thing I would like them to know, it's not an overnight turnaround on the decision whether or not to press charges or that person to go to jail for 20, 30 on years. It's not our choice in what happens across the street at the courthouse. A lot of people believe that we have the say-so in that when we really don't. It takes a process to collect everything, DNA from the laboratories, and get all that information back from those laboratories can be pretty timely. It can take anywhere between months to a year before we actually see any justice done.
Yeah, and I think that's good for people to know because I could understand how that might be frustrating, right, for a survivor and their family. But at the same time, you guys are trying your best. It just unfortunately does take that amount of time. So thank you for sharing that. Nurse Martha, what do you think?
Well, I say for us, we don't prosecute or have that role as a SANE nurse. What we do is we take the patient history, we perform our physical assessment, document our findings. Sometimes we're able to collect specimens, DNA collection, things like that, to send off to the crime labs, provide any STD prophylaxis if the patient qualifies for that, go over counseling referrals, other things like that, whatever we can do to help the patient. So I don't know if everybody knows that whole scope that we provide as our program for Medical Center Hospital. Also, some people think we can say, yes, you've been sexually assaulted or no, and we can't necessarily say yes or no. We're a third party within this investigation. So what we do is, again, collect the evidence, document any trauma, try to help that patient get through what they've been through. So.
Okay, and with that as well, I think that's so good for community members to know that your role is doing that medical side of it, right? Taking the specimen, getting all of that, but also referring for resources for that person. So that is awesome. Thank you so much. So since you guys both work with survivors, what are some signs that a survivor might show if they've been assaulted, or what are some things maybe that you've seen? Nurse Martha.
So there can be physical trauma, kind of like the obvious bruising, scratches, etc., things like that. There's also their emotional state. They can be crying, anxious, scared, even withdrawn. They will have like an impaired social functioning, a distorted self-perception even. They could also be symptom-free as well, so where you can't even tell that they've been through something traumatic as part of their own self-defense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Detective Gonzalez, what do you think? What are some signs?
Well, through the past, working these kind of cases, family members have all reported that, when dealing with a survivor, that they've seen a change in personality, distancing, like Nurse Martha brought up already. A change in behavior. Maybe the person used to be a bubbly person, and now they're, not so friendly, distance, and don't like to be touched. These are just some of the signs that they have. I mean, it's a hard process, and everyone kind of deals with it differently. So different personalities, is usually a clue, but not necessarily to just one specific offense, to like sexual assault or an indecency kind of case.
And I think that's so important for people to understand that one person might react to their assault this way, but another person could react completely different, right? Maybe there's no physical, evidence on their body, and also they might seem just like they normally do, because trauma, the way it affects our brains, is so different from each person. So thank you guys for pointing that out. My next question is, what happens if a survivor does not want to press criminal charges? Detective Gonzalez.
In cases like that, I will say that if the survivor, who the actor was relation to the survivor, if it falls in the classification of a family violence offense, that the state will still proceed with the charges, meaning we will still file on behalf of the victim, even though the victim doesn't want to. The state still moves forward with those kind of cases. If there's, and of course, they're still looked at by our district attorney's office and see if they'll accept the offense.
Okay. Nurse Martha, does your role change if somebody comes in to the hospital and knows that they don't want to press criminal charges, but they still want to get the same exam? Does your role change?
No, it's the same. We just explain it like a little different. We can run it as what we call a non-report. So if they have not been in contact with law enforcement, did not report it, we can do a non-report saying we won't contact law enforcement and get them involved. We'll do and conduct the SANE exam like we normally would. They have up to 2 years to decide whether they want to press those charges. So we give them a way to be able to track that and give them the case number, the tracking kit and things like that, so they can decide later if they want to press charges. We do talk and listen to them and explain the benefits of pressing criminal charges, but again, it's up to them. And we still do our whole process front to end.
Okay.
Document all the physical trauma, prophylaxis, counseling, all those other things are still all included.
I think that's so good to know, because if somebody is afraid to go to the hospital, to get an exam or to get checked out because they feel like they have to report, if they do, that's not true, right? They can still go get medical attention, do the same, and it not be reported.
Right.
I would like to.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we do have a mandated reporting that we do have to do. So if they don't fall between 18 to 65
yes.
With no mental disability or handicapped, then they can do that non-report. But if they're outside of those ranges, if they're minor, elderly past 65 or any mental disabilities, then we have to report.
Correct. Yeah, Detective Gonzalez, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, for those that aren't actually family members, we try to encourage them to report it to law enforcement, so that the collection of that evidence, it's very important to get that information. Even if the survivor, is not of a relation to the actor, and it's someone just in the community, it's good to have it documented, recorded, and all that evidence collected in the case that they decide later on that they do want to proceed with charges. We will have that, because if we don't have it and then they come later time, we may not be able to do as much as what we could have done had we been notified of it timely.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really good information for people to know. So my next question is for you, Detective Gonzalez. What happens if a victim was using drugs or drinking underage at the time of their assault? Will there be consequences for their drinking or drug use if they decide to report?
No, it's a good question. We get that a lot. We encourage anyone, regardless of their, if they had been drinking or underage drinking, like you mentioned, to report the information, because we're not, of course it is a criminal offense, but we're not concerned with that aspect. The more pressing issue here is the actual sexual assault, which we'll be focused on. Okay, we don't go back and look at towards that other information. We just need to gather everything and know all the details, whether it be illegal or illegal.
Okay.
Or legal or legal. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. So my next question is, can you explain kind of, and you talked about in the beginning, Detective Gonzalez, but a little bit about the process that survivors might go through after reporting? Kind of start from the beginning, like when they first report, how often will they have to repeat their story? What is that kind of like for a survivor?
Hmm. Unfortunately, their story may have to be repeated more than once. Usually, when a survivor will contact the police, they'll have to give an initial statement out, depending on the age of the person. If it's an adult female, then or a male, they have to provide the details to the officer that is taking the report. Once that process is done, that report is sent to our criminal investigations division and assign a detective. That detective may need finer details into the incident, and therefore have to ask that survivor for the story again.
Yeah.
Once we have all the details, there's going to be a great period where they're not going to have to say anything about the incident. But once they get to court, they may have to relive some of that again whenever they have to testify.
Okay, great.
If needed.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for all this really good information. I know I could sit here with you guys and talk forever about this. You know, this is something we're all obviously passionate about. We care about survivors, we care about our community. Is there anything that you guys want to say about your job or your role in this before we head out?
I will say that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Martha.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go for it.
Oh, I would just encourage anyone that knows somebody that's been a victim of sexual assault, or to encourage that person to seek out the law enforcement to make it a report, at least get it on record, get that information so that something can be done. I have had instances where a person wish they had made the report, because not so much for them, but for the next person, because that actor possibly could do it again to somebody else.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Martha.
I would just want to second everything that he says. Again, we want to encourage everybody to report, because we don't want that individual to go through being sexually assaulted again, or for that to happen to somebody else.
Yeah.
We are expanding our program. We're getting more nurses in our program and trained. So we're having the coverage that we didn't used to have, to be able to have 24/7 SANE nurses respond. So the program's growing. It's a lot of multidisciplinary teams going on. So I just want to encourage everybody to know that we do have this program in this area to help our community.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for all that you do for our communities. You know, we are here for the people in our area, and I know you guys are there for them. So I really just appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.